Daylight saving time, or summer hours, occurs in Alberta every year from the second Sunday in March until the first Sunday in November, when we regain standard time. On October 18th, Alberta will be holding a referendum to determine the fate of daylight saving time. On the ballot, Albertans will be asked, do you want Alberta to adopt year-round daylight saving time, which is summer hours, eliminating the need to change your clocks twice a year? The choice seems simple. Summer? Who doesn't love summer? Long days, lots of fun, no school, vacations, good times.
Well, it's not as simple as you may think. According to sleep and circadian rhythm experts, the best option would actually be permanent standard time. But unfortunately, that's not an option on the ballot. So you're probably wondering, what is the best option? Okay, so spoiler alert, the better option is actually keeping the biannual clock change. But we'll get to that in a second. But first, let's go see what the public thinks.
So what time do you wake up and what time do you go to sleep?
Wake up probably around 7 and go to bed probably around 12.
So I wake up at around 6:30, 7 a.m. and I go to sleep at around 12 or 1.
I wake up at 6:30 and go to sleep around midnight.
How would you describe how you feel during the winter with the standard time?
Definitely less awake in the mornings and sleepier at night because of how dark it is.
I actually feel pretty good during the winter because I have pretty bad insomnia, so I find I can't ever get enough sleep. But because in the winter it's still dark in the mornings, I don't wake up right at the crack of dawn, so I get some more sleep in.
I get really sad because it's super dark and depressing.
And overall, what would you prefer, permanent daylight savings or biannual clock change?
I think a biannual clock change because I think there is a noticeable difference with changing the daylight savings.
I would actually prefer permanent daylight savings just because then at least I'm getting a little bit more sleep in the winters, which is nice since I sleep like 3 hours a day.
I like the clock change. I'm a fan. I like the extra hour of sleep, even though it comes at the expense of an hour of sleep later.
It's interesting to hear what the public has to say, but let's talk about why keeping the biannual clock change is the better option and the effects of permanent daylight saving time on our health.
Our circadian rhythm is basically like a clock in our body. It uses morning sunlight as a biological cue to wake up and darkness as a signal to go to sleep.
So our body clock follows the sun, but we live in a world dictated by the social clock, which is the physical time, our work and school schedules, and social obligations. And often our body clock and social clock can become misaligned, and this is what we refer to as social jet lag.
You're probably asking yourself, so what does any of this have to do with Alberta?
Permanent daylight savings time in Alberta would cause our sunrises and sunsets to be extremely delayed. Calgary would experience sunrises as late as 9:30 a.m. in winter during daylight savings time, and the further up north and west you live, the worse this gets. Places like Grand Prairie won't have sunrise until 10:30 a.m. in December.
This is because Alberta is really west of our designated time zone. We already have really late sunrises, solar noons, and sunsets. Permanent daylight saving time would worsen this delay and worsen the mismatch between our body clock and our social clock.
Take Spain as an example, where the geography is west of the time zone, and people get 53 minutes less sleep than the average European since they go to bed later due to the late sunsets, but still have to wake up at the same time as everyone else to follow the social clock.
Although there are some health risks associated with spring forward, it has less detrimental long-term effects than establishing permanent daylight savings time. People who live in places located on the west of the time zones have later sunrises and sunsets, which were associated with higher instances of obesity, heart attacks, and diabetes.
With each 20-minute delay in sunrise, there's a significant increase in cancer rates, which includes 9% increase in stomach cancer, 16% increase in esophageal cancer, and a 13% increase in leukemia, and so much more. Some other consequences include worse performance at school, higher rates of car accidents in the morning, and increased stress.
Now, some of these effects can also be seen with biannual clock change during spring forward. However, we are only given two options, and establishing permanent daylight savings time will lead to permanent state of social jet lag and worsen chronic health effects over the course of the year than we will see with biannual clock change.
Vote no to permanent daylight savings time! And if you're still not convinced that permanent daylight savings time is a bad idea, just take a look at the USA and Russia.
The USA quit halfway through the first winter, and Russia quit after 2 years in.
And there's a good reason why.